The default cube. Yep, this one here. I know you guys clicked on a chess tutorial, like how to make a chessboard with the chess pieces, but we always just have to start with the cube. In fact, let's start with the chessboard. So hi guys, this is Kate from She3D, and I'll be showing you guys how to make the thumbnail that you just clicked on. Don't worry, will make it look exactly like the picture you just clicked on. So let's start off with the chessboard. Now you can design the chessboard however you want. I'm going to go to the top view. The shortcut for that is 7. Or you guys could just like play around with this, try and get a top view, but 7 is good. All right, now you can see we have this grid in the background. And yeah, I think we can leave the cube the size it is. All right, I'm going to press 7 again. Now I'm going to go into edit mode. We are currently in object mode. What edit mode is going to do, you're able to manipulate how the cube is cut into, and basically what I'm trying to do is make the checkered board itself. Currently it's just a flat face on top. So I want to divide it into 8 times 8 is 64. Yes, 64 squares. Right, the shortcut for that is tab. Now you can see it switched from object mode to edit mode, or you could literally just click down and say edit mode, but it's nice to know shortcuts. So what I'm going to do is try and add something called loop cuts. So what loop cuts are going to do is basically divide the square into further sections. So the shortcut for that is Control R. Once you press Control R on your keyboard, when you hover over the edges of your square, you will now see these yellow lines. That's going to allow you just to divide your square. So I'm going to start with this division here. Like I'm just hovering right now. Let me left click over here and then left click again. Now the reason why I left click twice, if I didn't left click twice, if I just press Control R to add a loop cut and I left click once, if I don't left click again, it's going to go off center. And the thing is, I want it in the center. You can, if you want it in certain places, you can left click once and then just hover where you want it, then left click again, then your loop cut will be there. But I do want it in the center, so I'm going to click on it twice without moving my mouse, and then when I let go, you can see, ta-da, I have cut this cube in half. So let's go to the top view again. Think of this as a chessboard. So we just have 2 sections. I'm going to press Control R again, and when I hover, you'll see now there's 2 yellow lines I could add now. So I'm going to add one here, left click twice, and then press Control R on this side, hover here, left click twice. So now I can see I have 4 squares, but a chessboard has 8 squares. So now I'm going to add more loop cuts in between these 4 guys. So Control R, double click twice, Control R. So we've done that. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the sides. So Control R. Now you can see I have a yellow line here when I hover here. If you hover on top, you can further divide these. If you want to make like an insane chessboard, like what is 16 times 16? I don't know. You can work that out. So I'm going to just add loop cuts here because I want a normal chessboard. And I'll just do the same thing what I did on like how I created the column. So now I'm creating rows. And you see how nice it is to use shortcuts. You can see it all popping here on the side. Hopefully you notice that. And ta-da, I have now done the top. Don't worry about the sides because no one cares about the sides of the chessboard. In fact, you could have a piece of paper. Like, do you look at the side of a piece of paper? So we look at the top. Now you will notice there's black dots. If you don't have black dots, okay, you might be in a different point of view in the edit mode. So there's 3 modes on top. We have point selection or like vertex. Vertex is literally the dot. The keyboard shortcut to enable that in edit mode is 1. You just press number 1. Press number 1, you can see it's on vertex mode. The other mode is edge select. So if your cube is looking like this and you don't see the black dots, it's probably you on edge select mode, or you could press 2. So if I just toggle between 1, there you can see the dots are there. If I press 2, then you can see, the edges are now selected. And this is useful. But what the mode we're going to use now is face select mode, which is the last one. And to click that, you guessed it, it's number 3. So here's 1, here's 2, here's 3. Now you can't really notice the difference between 2 and 3. Let me show you what 2 does. If I go onto edge select mode, if If I click on it, you will see that only an edge selects. But if I click on 3 to now go to face select mode, if I try and click this on the edge, it doesn't select the edge, it selects the face. Hence the name face select mode and then edge select mode. Okay, also, how do I shift my screen like this? Now I'm using a mouse. I'm not using my touchpad. So on my mouse, I'm holding down the middle scroll button, but to shift it like without making it look like this, and to shift it like this, I hold shift and middle mouse. So just for easier navigation. If you're just using a trackpad, holding down shift and I'm holding 2 fingers on the touchpad if you're using a touchpad, if you don't have a mouse. You can always use Blender without a mouse. Like when I was first starting out with Blender, I never had a mouse. All right, so you can see we have a chessboard, but obviously when we go out of the top view, this is a very thick chessboard. If you're into that, then sure. But I'm going to now scale the size. So I'm going to press tab. Remember tab, what does it do? It changes from edit mode to object mode. Or if it's a bit too overwhelming to remember all of these shortcuts, just know you can just switch to object mode here. Okay, the reason why I'm now going to object mode, what you'll notice is, where's all our divisions? Okay, don't worry. Object mode just shows how the whole object looks, whereas edit mode shows, okay, what you can manipulate, how the object is formed, what basically it shows you the mesh of your object that you have. So this is how we can manipulate. So if I just quickly do something, if I click on this face, remember I'm on face select mode, and if I press E, that's another shortcut. That is, E stands for extrude. So if I press E, you can now see I can extrude. If I go back into object mode, ta-da, you can now see how the shape looks. You get used to the different views. Okay, now the reason why I'm going to object select mode is just a bit easier to work with in terms of scaling, because now I want to change the size. You can do that in Edge, okay? To select all the faces as well in edit mode, press A to select all. Otherwise, if you really want to and not learn your shortcuts for some reason, you can click and drag. But look what happens in the back. These guys aren't selected. So if something's selected, it's highlighted in orange. So that's why it's nice to know your keyboard shortcuts. Just press A and you know, okay, everything that you want to select is selected rather than doing it manually. Whoops. Rather than doing it manually like this. And then holding shift to select more faces. Okay, so just learn your keyboard shortcuts. Anyway, back to object mode. I press tab at the shortcut. I'm now going to press the number 1 on my trackpad, which brings me to the front view. You don't need to know whether it's a front view or side view. It does say, but I basically just want one of the sides, okay? If I press 3, it takes me to the right view. So if I press Control 3, it's going to take me to the left view. If I press Control 1, it's going to take me to the back view. It doesn't matter. I just work with one, as long as it's one of the sides. Now, I'm going to teach you another shortcut, which is called Scale. And you could just press S. Okay, but look what happens. If I press S, you can now see there's this dotted line here. And if I move my mouse, I can change the size. But I don't want to change the size of the cube. I want to like flatten it. I want to make it less high. So if I left click again to confirm it, you'll now see it's a lot smaller. Let me press Control Z to undo. I'm going to now scale it upon the Z axis. So over here, you have like this graph, I don't know, these axes type of thing. You can see the Z. This scales it like the Z axis is vertical, top and down. Here we are working in a 3D space. If I click and drag, you can now see it follows along through what I'm doing. So the Z axis literally scales basically stuff vertically. The X will be left to right, depending on what view you're on. If I press 3 to go to the right view, you can now see, okay, the X and Y just swapped. Okay, it all depends on what view you want. But in this case, I just want to, I want to change the height. So I'll press S and then Z. But look what's going to happen, right? My cursor's quite close. What I do suggest is if you're trying to scale something, okay, that kind of worked, but make sure your mouse is like a bit far away from your object, because then it just makes it a bit more easier to scale things. Because if your cursor is right here and you press SZ, you want to make it smaller. At some point, it's going to do the opposite. So it's going to get bigger because now you're very close to the center. Okay, so if I do it from far, I have more leeway. Like, can you see it's easier, but it's a lot easier to control. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to make it, let's let's make it a fairly thin chessboard because chessboards aren't really thick. And now when I left click to confirm, you can now see I have a new size. On the right, we have a transform panel. If it's not showing for you, that's probably just press the letter N. Okay, maybe if it's like this, it just means it's not shown. You can either click and drag it open or just press N to bring it out. Okay, go into item, open transform, then you'll see, okay, all the properties for the selected object. So here's the cube, and we have the location, rotation, and scale. So if I just hold on, I'm going to quickly insert a cube just to show you something. When I click on a cube, you can see the scale is 111. Okay, that is the default size. But then look what happens now with this object. We started with the cube, now the scale's a bit off. So what you want to do is you want to apply the scale to the object. And how do you apply the scale? Because you probably think, yeah, I just changed the scale, it should be fine. No, because sometimes when you're adding other stuff like if you're adding texture nodes or modifiers to it, it might act strange. Now, if you don't know what I just said, what those words were, you will see later on this tutorial how I make use to get the nice gloss effects of the chess pieces. Okay, so currently I want everything to be 111. I can't just change it now like that because then we get back to the default cube. All right, so what I'm going to do is press Control A, make sure your object's selected, Control A, you'll now have this pop-up of apply. What do you want to apply? I want to apply the scale. Okay, because I only changed the scale. You can say all transformations if you change the location, rotation, and scale, but I will just say scale because that's all I did. And once I click on that, you'll now see the Z is back to 1. That's how you want your objects to be. I'm going to press Control S to save. It's just a habit. Okay, now when I go back here, you guys are probably wondering, where is my grid? Okay. Firstly, I don't know about you guys, but gray seems depressing. Like walking in Blender and seeing gray everywhere. It's just sad. So what I like to do, this isn't going to change how the object's going to look in the end. This is just your preference. What you can do, if you look here on top, you have different modes. You have wireframe mode. If I click on that, it looks scary, like a spider web or something. Especially if you have like a big project and you put wireframe mode on, it kind of looks insane. Okay, wireframe mode, that's kind of like you would use this mode maybe if you were trying to adjust small details inside. We usually work in object mode by default. We also get shading mode, material preview. And this is like when you're adding colors or textures or shading to your actual object of how you want it to look. And then we get render mode. Now I'm scared to click on render mode because my laptop might explode. So we'll get back to that. Go back to viewport shading mode. Click on the drop down arrow. You'll now see that we have the sphere over here. And we have 3 different tabs. We have Studio, Matcap, and Flat. If you click on Matcap and you click on your circle, you have other views of how you want your thing to display. Now, I love this color because I feel it looks so cute to work in. This isn't going to affect how your final thing's going to look, by the way. Your final chess thing won't be, this weird turk cyan color, and then, I don't know, it keeps changing colors. If you want to be boring, sure, work in gray. But I like just to have personality. If you want to work in this, sure, for some reason. This is an interesting one. Very reflective surface. It's all your preference. So I'm going to work on this one. You guys can play around with it. It's not going to affect how your final object's going to look. It's just literally in your material thing. If you go to flat, just in case you're wondering, flat doesn't have anything. Studio has different variations of white or gray. Yeah, so you go to Matcap and then just choose. You can work in the default one, but just in case you guys have seen our previous tutorials and wondered why is there a different color, it's just because you can change the way you are working or how your object appears. All right, so I'm going to go back here, press 7, I'm just going to centralize it, and I'm going to go to edit mode. So I press tab as the shortcut. I want to make sure I'm on face select mode. So face select mode, press 3 or just click on the sky. Even if you don't know what they are, hover over it and you'll see, okay, that's the vertex, that's the edge, that is the face. Okay, so I'm going to press 7. Now, what do I want to do? I will show you. I'm trying to make a chessboard. Okay, now you can customize this however you want. A chessboard, is checkered, so each alternate square is a different color. And I'm going to make it interesting because I want to promote the brand. I like the brand colors. So I'm going to make it pink. Or maybe I should do purple. So I also want to make it like a dark color. So instead of using black and white squares, I will use purple and a mirror color. So just plan whenever you're working in Blender and you're trying to do your materials and customize how you want something to look, just plan how you want to approach it. So this is the top of the board. If I just take you quickly around the object in case you're wondering, the bottom also has a square. You don't need to worry about the bottom unless you want to make, I don't know, some animation with a flip, your board flips and you can see both sides. But for this tutorial, I'm going to focus like on a simple chessboard. I'm going to press 7. And what I'm going to do now, I'm in edit mode. I'm going to select on one square. If you want to select separate individual squares, you're going to hold shift. Because if you hold control, what it's going to do, it's going to select the whole row. So if I want to select the square individually, if I'm holding control, it's, as you can see, it selects the whole thing. And I don't want that. Also, why do I want to select the separate squares? See, now I'm holding shift. Because I want to add a material to these squares. That's why I had to add edge loops, because now I have more freedom and control of how I want to select it. Also, if you do select the wrong square by accident, just undo it and you're good to go. So I'm going to select all of these squares. And if I go back to object mode, if I press tab, you'll see nothing. It looks the same. If I press tab again, you can now see, okay, those squares are selected. Now, how do I assign material to that? I'm going to teach you something. Let me go back to object mode. In fact, let me now go to viewport shading so you can see the colors going to change. By the way, these colors that you see now is only going to reflect in object mode. That's just your customization of how you want to work. I'm going to go into viewport shading. So currently this object has no color. You might say it's white, but white is the default no material given. If I go to the right over here, you will see I have a layers panel. So if you're working in Photoshop or maybe like a drawing app, you always have like a layer panel. So on the right, I have a layer panel, and on below that, I have all of these weird traumatizing icons. Like you might be scared even to see, oh, there's so many options. So I'm just gonna expand it so you guys can, I'll take you guys through it. So here's my layers. We have one scene. Think of it as a folder. We have a camera in the folder. So camera is when you're rendering out your final project, how is it going to look? So just think of it. If you had to take a video with your phone, that is the result you're going to get. So the camera is the video file scene. So if I place my scene like this, if I place it like that, it's not going to look like that unless it looks like that on the camera. I'll get back to the camera later on. The cube is the object that I have, and we have one source of light because when we're rendering this out, it's going to simulate like a 3D world space. And obviously, if there's no light, your scene is going to be dark. So I can actually get rid of that for now. I'll worry about lighting later. So to delete it, you can just press X to delete and it's gone. Okay, so you'll notice a lot of the options just disappeared. There's only options based on what's selected. So I had the light selected, so I had options for the lights to manipulate and all of that. If I click on the cube, I still have a lot of different options. So I will go through most of them throughout the tutorial. Don't worry about them. For now, let's create a material because I want to add color to this. So if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you will see this red icon called materials, and that's where you can change the colors. So I'm currently in viewport shading mode, this option over here. If you're not on that, you're not going to see your changes reflect. So if you're still in viewport shading, you're not going to see your changes show unless you also change the color to reflect in your viewport shading. Okay, but don't worry about that. Just make sure you are over here. It will also show in render mode, but the reason why I'm not clicking on render mode right now, you have to change a few settings, especially if you don't have a high-end laptop. It's gonna take, it might take a long time to load, and yeah, it takes a lot of processing power. So I'm not going to click on it now. Only once I need it, I'll click on it, but I'll have to change a few settings first to make sure, okay, it's optimized to my laptop and I can run smooth with it. Okay, so click on your object that you want to add a material to. And you will now see, go to material options, you'll see we have surface. You can open preview. Preview isn't really important right now. I mean, if you want to have that display you can. I'm just going to close it. And surface is really what's important. So firstly, this cube has a default material called material. Let's change the name. So it's nice to always just change the name, be organized from the start. I'm going to change this to, let's call it glass. Okay, I'll call it glass. So I'm going to make the whole chessboard out of glass. I'm going to make a glass material. And to do that, we're going to change a few aspects or a few settings under the material. Okay, you guys can customize this however you want. You can play around the settings. You can just change and see, okay, what are you happy with? Okay, so under surface, you can see if you click on this, we have different shading principles. If you go up or scroll up, you will see there's something called a gloss, BSDF. Okay, don't worry about what that stands for. I don't know, so don't ask me. But gloss, if I click on gloss, your whole thing changes. Now you can see we have a material. Okay, if I go into render mode, I'll go into it later, you would see it reflects a more realistic looking way of how glass is represented. Currently, it kind of looks dull. Don't stress about that later. We can always tweak it later on. For now, I'm just trying to assign materials basically. You don't need to play around with this for now. If you do want to play around with it, I do suggest you play around with it in render mode, not viewport shading. Because viewport shading, that's not how your actual final object's going to look like. It's only going to show how it's going to look like in your render mode. So for now, just click on that and you'll have a basic glass thing. But now what happened to the checkered stuff? If I go now back to edit mode, I'm just going to click on tab. You can see my squares are still selected because I didn't select anything else afterwards. But now I want to assign a different material to these squares because I want to make it a different color. You can make it a different color glass. In my case, I am just going to give it like a solid material, not like any glossy glass thing. I'll just give it a normal thing, material, and I'll make it purple. Okay, but to do this, you cannot now, if let's say if you want to change the color, if you're going to make it blue, can you see what's happening? The whole chessboard becomes blue and it's a blue gloss. You don't want that. So what you need to do, you can't even undo this. So be careful with this one. I'm going to put it back to white. The hex code for white is 6Fs. Okay, so now it's back to white, right? That's what the original was. If you want to add a material or a different material on the same object, you need to make sure you add a plus icon. So add a material. Now I can see it's blank because I now need to say, okay, what material do I want? So I'm going to click on new. And then I get the same settings. Let me rename this quickly. I'll say purple. Yeah, purple's fine. Okay, so currently this is what it looks like. And I'm going to change the color. So this is just a basic flat color. It has no gloss effects or anything. So I'm going to change it to purple. Let me make it a bit darker. And as you can see, while I'm changing the color, nothing's reflecting. That's because I haven't assigned it yet. So when I click on assign, look what happens. Ta-da! You now have a chessboard. Let me just press in to get rid of that. We have a chessboard. Okay, now I know I've been stalling on the render mode. Some of you guys are probably maybe have even skipped to the end to see how this looks, but let me sort this out now for you guys. So before I click on render mode, because my laptop might say not responding, yours might even crash or explode. We don't want any injuries. So before we get there, we need to change some settings according to your specifications. So I'm going to click on this render properties. And you'll see by default, every Blender file is Eevee. Now, if you don't know what render engines are, you don't need to stress. Just know the two main ones, Eevee and Cycles. We don't really worry about Workbench. If you want to know more about it, I will speak about it maybe in another tutorial. But the two main ones are Eevee and Cycles. Now, I'm going to show you on screen. You guys, if you search Blender tutorials on YouTube, you probably have seen this guy called Blender Guru. He's one of the best guys and he explains so well. And I did a tutorial following the donut tutorial and I'm going to show you, this is my Eevee donut render and this is my cycled donut render. Now you can see the difference between the two, the quality, the lighting, the realisticness. That's because it's two different render engines. Now, of course, when you're rendering something else, now rendering means to like process and make a final uh, image or video out of it. When you're rendering, obviously now the cycles one is going to take up a lot of processing power. It's going to take longer because it's getting all of that extra information that Eevee is not simply getting. So currently my render engine is on Eevee. Now Eevee is a very basic one and every laptop can handle it. Okay, so if I click on render mode, I haven't changed any settings. This is what it currently looks like. Now you're probably thinking, this is not how I want my chessboard to look. Okay, we're going to add in lights, we're going to add in all of that. That will also just make it amplify how it looks. All right, if I'm going to change the cycles, that's a bad decision if you're not going to change any settings. So before we get there, if you clicked on cycles, hopefully the end of the world didn't happen. So before we click on cycles, if you really want to choose cycles, you are going to go to edit, click on preferences, and we're going to see what your laptop is capable or desktop is capable of. So go to preferences, click over here on system, and you will notice you have all of these 5 options. If yours is currently on none, click on CUDA or OptiX. Those are usually available on most computers or laptops. Okay, if you have a graphics card, it will show. If you just have a CPU, you can click on it. Now, this is basically telling your Blender is telling your laptop what graphics card or what CPU do you want to use. Now, you can say I have my graphics card enabled. I am not going to select this. Now, you're probably thinking, if I have both selected, it's going to use both, which means more processing power and it's going to be faster. On the contrary, if your CPU is slower than your GPU, it's actually going to make the process a lot more slower. So in that case, that's for me. That's my case. I'm just going to leave my GPU selected. You can use either CUDA or OptiX. Here it's the same. Now, if you have a high-spec device, if you click on this, you would have options available. I do not have. So the highest I can go is by OptiX. And yes, and then if you can also check if you have something available here. If you don't, that's perfectly fine. Just like me, I don't have that. So make sure that is enabled. That's the first thing that you want to make sure. Make sure it's not selected on none. You will find once you're rendering, it's going to take so long. It's going to take a couple of hours. You don't want that. So click on whatever the highest option you have. Then once you click on that, you can just click on X. And now, when we get to our render settings, so before I click on cycles, I'm going to go back to shading mode because I don't want my laptop to crash. Now when I change to cycles, you'll now see I have this whole new list of options because Eevee and cycles are different. You can see a render engine cycles that we change it to, and your device's CPU. If you have a GPU, please use it, especially if it's faster than your CPU. So change it to GPU. Then you'll get your samples. Okay. Max samples is 1024. This is in your viewport. By the way, all of this that we're seeing right now, this whole screen on the left, that's your viewport. That's what you're seeing in the viewport. When you're rendering, that's what you're going to see in the final outcome. You can see in your render mode, there are 4096 samples. If you don't know what that means, it literally means to get one image. Let's say I want to render out this image. One image in my render mode is currently set to 4096 samples. So if you guys know animation, think of it as there are 4096 frames in 1 second, which is insane. If I can just give you a reference to think about. So you want to change this to a low number. Now, don't think it's going to compromise a lot on quality because it actually, unless you're looking for very, very detailed stuff and you want crisp quality, you can have high numbers like this. Even if your laptop, especially if your laptop can handle it, then sure, go ahead. But I will change it to 10. I know that's a very small number as opposed to the thousands. I get stunning results regardless. You guys can even test it for yourselves. So now I just changed both because in viewport mode, what it does is if I move this in render mode, let me show you. Now I can click on render mode. It's safe to do so. This is now in cycles. Can you see it says rendering done? If I change it, let me actually change it to a higher number so it stays on screen. to make it 1000 so you guys can see. If I move my thing, it has to render while I'm moving, so even while I'm working in viewport. And what you'll notice is if your laptop isn't able to handle that, it's going to probably sound like a jet engine. Like the fan is going to be working overtime and your laptop might catch on fire. Just saying. So you want to make sure you just work with capable stuff. So change your settings and there we go. If I switch back to Eevee, and I'm still in render mode. Can you see now how much detail is lost in the Eevee render engine? When I change the cycles, you can now see I have a bit more depth. Okay, don't worry, our final isn't going to look like this. We'll worry about that later. For now, let us make the chess pieces, the moment you've been waiting for. So I'm going to rename the cube. Also, when you're working in render mode, it is going to take a lot of processing power and make your laptop a lot slower. So that's why we try and work in viewport shading mode. I'm going to rename the cube. Click on the cube, press F2 as the shortcut, and let's name this chessboard. So our chessboard is done. It took long, but if you just model it quickly, it can take you 1 minute to do everything what I've just done. Now let's make the chess pieces. Now, I don't know how chess pieces look in my head. So what I do is I use a reference. There's nothing wrong with the reference. How do you add in a reference in Blender? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Shift A to import something. Now, Shift A, you will get this option. We work a lot with this to get in different meshes. Now, if you forget that shortcut, you could also go on top here and just click on Add. You get the same options. But I'm going to press Shift A, going to go to Mesh, and sorry, not Mesh. I'm going to go to Image, and then Reference Image because I want a reference. When I click on that, it's going to ask me, okay, what do you want to import? And ta-da! And it's a reference image, and you can see on your Layers panel, it is now there. Let me rename it so I know what I'm working with. Reference Image. And I chose a nice reference image. If you're following this along with this, try and choose a simple picture that has a lot of chess pieces you know you can model. I'm going to just change the scale. And now I want to move this up because currently my chessboard is in the way. What I'm going to do to move this, I'm going to press G while it's selected, and G allows you to move your object. Okay, I'm going to undo that. I'm going to just move it above this. In fact, you don't need to even move it. I'm just going to disable the chessboard and start modeling. Okay, don't worry about moving it. If you want to move it, you can. Okay, how do I start off now? Let's start off with the easy piece. Hopefully you guys are following this, everyone watching this tutorial, hopefully you know how to play chess and what the pieces are called. If you don't know, here's a recap. There are 6 different pieces, okay? We have pawns. There are 8 pawns on a chessboard. There are 2 rooks. Some of you call this castles. It's called a, no, wait. Yes, it's called a rook. It's called a rook. This is not called a horse. This is called a knight. There are also 2 knights. This is called a bishop. There are 2 bishops. In this case, this is the queen. There's 1 queen, and then there's 1 king. All right, let's start with the easy guy, small dude. This guy is called the pawn. What I'm going to do is I will create a folder just to organize everything. Okay, you can have everything all at once, or you can follow along what I'm doing. So in my layers panel, if yours isn't showing, if it's like hidden, like this, just expand it so everything shows. I'm going to click over here and you'll see it says add new collection. Ta-da, we have a new collection. I'm going to rename this one. I'm going to call it, let's say, pink chess pieces. I'll make the pink chess pieces first. So let's make the pawn. To do that, I will insert a cube. I know, a cube. I know the pawn is a cylindrical shape, but I'll show you guys now why I'm adding a cube. So I'm going to press Shift A, click on Mesh. I will not select cylinder. It's a lot easier to manipulate the cube because it has less points. Let me quickly show you what I mean. If I click on cylinder and I zoom out, if I press tab to go into edit mode and press 1, you'll notice there's a lot of vertex points to manipulate. If I just enter a cube, I'm going to just move the cube. And if I go into edit mode, and you can see there's a pretty much 8 vertices over here, or vertices rather. So let's undo that. Now, how do I make the cube cylindrical though? Let me show you. Shift A, mesh, cube. If you zoom out, it's quite big. You can press S, you learned that shortcut, and just scale it down. I'm now going to move the cube pressing G and somewhere around there. I just want it on top. So basically what I'm going to do, for those of you who draw, and you say you use reference, but you're not actually referencing, you're kind of tracing, we're going to do that over here. We're going to sort of trace the pawn, but you don't have X-ray vision. So how can you see through the cube? Well, actually you can. What you can do is, there's this button here called Toggle X-ray. Now we have X-ray vision. Cool, right? So click on X-ray, you can now have the cube see-through. This isn't going to affect how your final thing is going to look. It's just affecting how your workspace is. So I'm going to just scale it a bit more to an appropriate size. I think that's okay. I'm going to press G to move. It doesn't have to be completely in line. You can even do this in your head. You don't need reference if you really feel you're okay without it. So I'm just going to make it around the size. Now, how do I make this more spherical, cylindrical? Because this is a very cylindrical piece. In fact, all of them are. What you can do is we're going to add something called a modifier. Now, if you don't know what that is, think of the word modify. Modify is to change the appearance of something. So I'm going to click on this wrench. This wrench modifies things. Let's add a modifier. And I'm going to add something called a subdivision surface modifier. Now, whoa, if you apply that modifier, all of a sudden you have like a strange looking cube dice thing. You know those weird die? The single word for dice is die, which is strange. If I open this, you can now see we have something called levels viewport and something called render. These are basically they do the exact same thing. This is just how it views it, how it shows in the viewport, and this is how it shows in the render, your final product thing. So I do recommend having them both the same number, so you know, okay, if I'm working with 2 here, my final is also going to be in 2. You don't want to be working with 2 different things. So if I click on 2, this is how it's going to look in my render mode. Basically, it means how much vertices or levels, or how much are you smoothing this out. Don't go crazy with it, especially if you have a basic entry laptop. Your laptop will not manage it. Your Blender might even crash. So I'm just going to click on 4 to show you what this actually does. And I can see we have more of a sphere-like shape. So that's what your subdivision does. I'm going to put it back on 2. You want to work with a low number, as low as possible. In fact, I think 3 would be better, just to make it a bit more easier for us to work with. So this hasn't been applied yet. So if you're going to now render this out, it's still going to show a cube. If you want to apply it, you can just hover your cursor over here and press Ctrl A to apply, and you can see you get a message applied modifier. So now this is actually, when you go into edit mode now, you have all of these points over here. If I do not apply the modifier and I go into edit mode, I get a cube, right? And you can see we still get that spherical thing. If you're really confused as to what I'm doing right now, it will make sense after I model this. So I did not apply the modifier. I'm keeping it at 3. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to edit mode to edit the shape of this thing. I find this the most easiest and simpler way. If you have another way and you're happy with it, feel free to put in the comments and then just explain. But I'm very comfortable with this method. So right now it's a bit hard or difficult to see on my eyes personally. So I'm going to click on the reference image and lower the opacity so it's not too strong. So click on your reference image, click on image. You will see under empty, there's opacity. Enable that and now you can adjust how transparent it is. So I'm just going to make it like this, and that's a bit easier for me to work with because I'm really trying to focus on this cube sphere thing. That's what I want to do. So now when I click back on the cube, I'm going to press edit mode, press tab, and you will see that same sphere over there in the background. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in loop cuts. Remember the shortcut was Control R. Look what happens when I press Control R, right? I still get the same option. When I hover over that, I get that. I'm going to add it to the side. But look what happens when I click left twice. Can you see? It's now making it more box-like. Okay, so this is the method I'm going to use. Okay, I'm going to press Control R, click on it once. Now, when I click and drag, you can see how I can manipulate it. And there we go. I can now just click and drag to my appropriate size. And this is the method you're going to use. It's kind of a long, tedious method, but you will get used to it. I'm going to click on it, and I'm happy around there to change the shape. In fact, I got wireframe mode on. I'm now going to select the bottom part. Make sure you are in X-ray mode. If you're not in X-ray mode and you select the bottom, if I just go out of it, it's not going to select the back lines as well. It won't. So make sure you are in X-ray mode. Now I'm going to click on S to scale. And I can say I can change the base. It doesn't have to be exact. It can just be very similar. If you feel this guy needs to move down, then select that, press G, and bring it down. And then you're just going to have to keep on tweaking, manipulating it, and yeah. Okay, I'm going to now just fast forward through this part so you guys don't have to sit and watch. It's trial and error. Basically, however you want this to look, you can add as many loop cuts as you want. After all, it's your chess piece. So have fun with it. All right, so that's done. I finally finished. Just to get a better picture of how it looks, I'm going to turn off the reference. Ta-da! This is how our first chess piece looks like. Some people take like a vertex and do an outline and then use a screw modifier. That is nice, but I prefer this method. So you can do that if you want. So this is how it looks. You can see it kind of looks pixelated because I haven't smoothed it out. If you really want to, you can right click, say shade smooth, and ta-da, you have a more smoother finish. If I just turn off the X-ray mode on, you get a better picture of how your first chess piece looks like. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to re-enable the reference image. And I will copy and paste it over here. So I'm going to make a duplicate. Put your cursor in the viewport, press Shift-D, and then you can make a duplicate. But if you have pressed 1 and you're like in the front view, just press X so it locks it to the X-axis. So you can just slide it along here, and there we go. So just be smart about it. Instead of like remaking a cube, adding a subdivision surface modifier, changing the settings, you can literally just copy and paste it and you'll be fine. All right, I will now speed run this one. I'm just going to manipulate the existing points to this image over here.
One eternity later.
Finally, it took me so long to do this. I eventually finished. Now, I know that I did a time lapse and it was very fast, but if you really want to see all the details and what I did and all the steps, you know you can just slow down the video, like video speed on your YouTube settings. You can slow it down if you want it or to see exactly what I've done. But you would have seen I have duplicated the pawn as a base on all of this layers. You would have also just seen what I've been pressing in case you were confused or lost. You can make a more detailed horse. I just made a simple outline. I think this looks good enough. I'm happy with this guy. He looks cute. I'm happy with this. You can make it more detailed. You can customize it to how you want to look. And if you guys want to start adding shaders, watch the next tutorial. Keep a lookout for that. I will post it soon.